take a look at this weather map real quick. Look at how many alerts we have across the country. We have a blizzard that is currently ongoing. We have a severe weather outbreak. Strong tornadoes are possible. We have very gusty winds. We have extreme heat. We have freezes coming. The weather is going crazy over the next few days. We have a lot to talk about. A lot of dangerous weather is on the way that you need to make sure that you're prepared for. Today is Sunday, March 15th, and today in the world of weather, I'll break down everything that is going to happen and what impacts you can expect where you live. Let's get started trying to make a little bit of sense of this map. So the biggest headlines you need to know: areas in the north, this is where the blizzard is happening. The northern Midwest, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the UP of Michigan, those are the most at-risk areas for snow. You are seeing the snow. The snow will continue over the next few hours. Further south in the midsection of the country, that's where some storms are starting to bubble up. I'm recording this around 3:30 Central Time. These storms will be progressing eastward, and we have a rather significant severe weather threat continuing tonight and especially on your day tomorrow. Everywhere else that is under an alert, more than likely it is a wind alert. We have a lot of wind coming in with the system, high wind warnings, wind advisories. That's also causing a lot of fire weather concerns down in Texas. All these pink alerts here, this is red flag warnings. So if you're in this area, please do not burn, prevent any burns, because any fire that starts could spread very quickly. Finally, we're tracking some freeze warnings across portions of the deep south where we have a late season deep freeze coming. More on that in a minute. We also have heat alerts in the desert southwest where we have an unprecedented heat wave that is coming. Again, more on that in a minute. It's a lot to talk about. We're going to start talking about severe weather. Okay, so we'll start with severe weather, then we'll shift over to some of the other threats. We do have a line of storms that is forming, just knocking on the door of St. Louis, probably reaching there by the time this video is out. A few thunderstorms are turning severe in these orange boxes with gusty winds. This line will only strengthen as it moves further east, and we're only in the beginning stages of this severe weather event. We have a large enhanced 3 out of 5 risk of severe weather from the Storm Prediction Center today. This is particularly concerning across portions of the deep south, the Mississippi River Valley up north into portions of the Midwest. So Memphis, Birmingham, Jonesboro, Louisville, anyone in this orange shade, you are most at risk for damaging winds and tornadoes. Those are the main risks. Even in this yellow shade, which does include Chicago, New Orleans, Atlanta, you're still at risk for severe weather. Maybe not as high as a chance as those in the enhanced category, but still need to watch out. The marginal category is very large. It extends all the way down to Florida, all the way up to Detroit and Michigan and Wisconsin. And especially in this northern part here, some spots that have the threat for severe weather are also going to be transitioning over to very heavy snow. So it's a very dynamic system with a lot of different parts to it. There'll be 2 corridors where the tornado threat is highest. The first will be this yellow shade, which does include Memphis. Memphis, you're right in the middle, up toward Paducah, portions of eastern Arkansas, and kind of hugging that Mississippi River Valley. That's where the threat for strong tornadoes are possible, and the highest coverage is likely in the yellow shade. There's a second little corridor down here in portions of Alabama, Montgomery, Columbus. A few supercells are possible. Broadening out though, if you're even in the brown shade, you still need to be weather aware for potential tornadoes later on tonight into the evening, especially during the overnight hours. That's when we're most vulnerable, when most of us are asleep. So we need to make sure that we have multiple ways to receive warnings for when these storms come in case you need to take shelter in the middle of the night. By far though, the wind threat will be the most widespread. What's going to happen is this line of storms is going to contain some very gusty winds as it moves eastward, especially in this pink shade. That's where there's a 45% chance of damaging severe thunderstorm winds. In the hatch shade, the black hatching, that's where we can get up to 75-mile-per-hour winds. So this is what's really driving this enhanced risk, and so prepare for potential wind damage and power outages later on tonight. One thing that's kind of driving the system that is pretty noteworthy is the wind shear. I mentioned this in my last video, but what's happening is we have a lot of energy just from the winds up in the atmosphere, and some of these will be translated down to the surface. Not only is that going to create our gusty wind threat, it's also creating a lot of wind shear. Up in the atmosphere, the winds will be ripping from the southwest to the northeast. Meanwhile, at the surface, we're going to have strong winds out of the south, and this will create a lot of wind shear where as you go up in the atmosphere, the winds will kind of switch directions. What this does, this increases the threat for tornadoes because we get rotation. And this map here, all these colors, this shows the potential for wind shear. So we have a lot of wind shear in place, which is why the tornado threat is particularly elevated not only today, but also tomorrow as we get toward portions of the eastern seaboard. So let's time it out, focusing again only on the storms right now. The storms will be moving through St. Louis over the next few hours, 4 to 5 p.m. Central Time. What I'm watching for on radar, there are 2 things. First is the main line of storms. This is where the gusty winds are most likely, where we could have those wind gusts of 60 to 70 miles per hour, especially in any Boeing segments that develop. So the threat here is particularly concerning because it's not going to be localized, it's going to be very widespread. If some of these line segments contain gusty winds, anyone along the line could be impacted by this, and it's not going to be like tornadoes where it's localized. This will be a widespread event. So that's why we're concerned for the potential for a lot of damage over many areas. The other thing of concern is out ahead of the line. See some of these cells that are forming near Paducah, potentially into portions of Kentucky, Tennessee. If any storms form ahead of the line, they could bring tornadoes. This is where the supercellular threat is kind of the highest, and that's something we'll be watching closely. Notice as the line advances further east, we don't have too many of those storms riding ahead of the main line, which is a little bit encouraging. But look, even down here in Mississippi, we could have a few. Any storms that decide to take advantage of the environment ahead of the main line, they get to steal all the energy from themselves, and that's where some of the stronger tornado threat is present. So we're watching out for that. This is now 8 p.m. Even along the line though, spin up tornadoes are possible and probably likely in many areas. So spin up tornadoes are very hard to predict. They can really happen anywhere within that line very quickly and then spin back down, but they can still cause some damage. So as that line approaches, it's just a good bet. Stay indoors. That's the best place you can be, and be prepared to shelter in an interior room in case tornado warnings are issued. Now be prepared to do it rather quickly, because this will be an event where the tornado will happen very quickly and then spin down very quickly, and we could have some pretty short notice time. So just making sure we have a plan in place, and then we're going to be okay. Notice these storms still progress east, still going strong into the overnight hours, all up and down, all the way from Michigan into portions of Louisiana, everywhere in between. This is why it's especially important in the overnight hours, have a way to receive warnings as some of these storms move through overnight. Damaging winds and tornadoes is still a threat. The storms will gradually weaken as they move further east, especially once we get into the dawn hours of Monday. Beyond that enhanced risk, still some storms possible early Monday 4 or 5 a.m. but notice everything is kind of weakening as they hit Atlanta. This is temporary though. The severe weather threat will ramp up again tomorrow for Monday. So diving straight into it, tomorrow's risk is even more concerning than today, unfortunately. We now have a moderate risk, a level 4 out of 5 of severe weather in a corridor focused from South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia. This includes Washington, D.C. It includes areas just to the west of Greenville, North Carolina, Florence, South Carolina, Richmond, Petersburg. All these areas are impacted. The red is definitely most at risk. Moderate risk days don't happen that frequently, and it's really the Storm Prediction Center's way of telling you need to watch out because these storms could be business. Even the orange area though, Philadelphia, Charlotte, near Jacksonville, Virginia Beach, were still at risk for significant severe storms. This is pretty rare to see this high of a risk on the eastern seaboard. In fact, I think in the past decade it's only happened a handful of times. Some of these communities here out east aren't as prepared for severe weather. It's not as common here as it is further to the west across the plains and the Mississippi River Valley, and that's why it's particularly important that we have a tornado plan in place, know what to do when the warnings are issued, and are staying super vigilant, super weather aware on your day Monday. The tornado risk is particularly high across portions of that moderate risk, so that does include DC. It's that corridor again from Maryland, Virginia, North and South Carolinas in that red shade. That's where strong, potentially long track tornadoes are possible. Damaging wind threat, especially in this purple, that lines up with that moderate risk. That's where the highest threat for widespread damaging winds, potentially 70 miles per hour plus. In fact, this purple color, that's a 60% chance of seeing damaging winds where you live. That's over the odds of a coin flip that you get damaging winds where you live, and this will be a very widespread event. Even the pink though, 45% chance, so a pretty bad day. Wind and tornadoes remain the main threat. So if we pick up where we left off on the radar, this is 7 a.m. now on Monday morning. Everything will be weak to start the day, but strengthening as the day goes on. Here are some of my observations for the day tomorrow. So we have that main line, that main risk of storms. Mainly damaging winds will accompany the main line. What's going to happen though out ahead of the line, that's where the tornado threat is really maximized. As we can see on the radar here, we'll get a few of these clusters and pockets of storms potentially develop as soon as noon ahead of the main line of storms, and these have the potential to be supercells capable of hail and tornadoes, and this is where strong tornadoes and potentially a few long track tornadoes are possible. Now it's going to be a really interesting situation. We're going to be watching for, first of all, how fast the cold front travels. If the cold front travels a little bit faster, it could reduce the potential for some of these supercells, but as it stands, our high resolution models continue to support numerous showers and storms out ahead of the line, and any of these storms here will be capable of some of those tornadoes and potentially a few strong tornadoes. So be on the lookout Monday afternoon. That main line of storms though, it'll be moving through central Pennsylvania, the Appalachian Mountains, all the way down into North Carolina, Charlotte as we head into 12 to 3 p.m. and then it'll move towards the east coast as we head into the evening hours, and this is kind of when the wind and tornado threat is at its strongest. These are some particularly nasty storms possible around DC, extending a little further south into Virginia, Richmond, Greenville, North Carolina, and this is where that widespread damaging wind is possible with that 60% chance. Also, embedded tornadoes within the line of storms is still possible. Everything will still move to the east. This is now 9 p.m. Fortunately, there will be less of a nocturnal threat on Monday. So today's threat, it will extend into the overnight hours. Tomorrow's threat, as the sun sets, all the storms will start exiting off the east coast, and the severe weather threat will mainly be during the afternoon and early evening, so at least more people will be awake. But still, make sure that if the tornado warning goes off, you have a plan on where to go in your house. The most interior room possible, a basement, is preferable. Also be prepared for potential power outages, especially across that corridor of greatest wind threat. If you're in that moderate risk, that's where damaging winds, power outages are most likely, and maybe a few tree branches snap. That sort of wind damage is possible. Okay, so that by itself I feel like could be a video, but there's more. So next, let's shift over to talk about the blizzard that is currently ongoing. We have a lot of reports already of snowfall totals up to 12 to 14 inches, especially across portions of Wisconsin. This is where blizzard warnings are in effect. Anywhere in orange here on the map, watch out. Not only do we have the heavy snow, we have the gusty winds, and that's going to create really low visibility. So tracking it out, some areas like Chicago that see those heavy storms, then you'll transition over to snow a few hours later. So it's going to be pretty crazy. We're going to go from heavy wind, tornadoes potentially, all the way to snow. A very wide range of weather impacts. Notice though we still have several hours of heavy snow as we go into the evening, overnight, and early Monday morning across portions of Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, the UP of Michigan. We are tracking a bit of an ice threat that's developing across the northern Michigan peninsula. So that's something we're watching. In this area, we have some ice storm warnings where a quarter of an inch of ice is possible. Meanwhile, the UP of Michigan, you're going to stay all snow from this and some potentially very heavy snow. That's kind of where the snowfall maxima of 2 to 3 feet, isolated 4 feet totals are possible. The gusty winds will be blowing through this whole event, so travel will be very dangerous. Everything will start moving to the east on your day Monday, but it'll take its time clearing, especially across that corridor from Wisconsin, UP of Michigan, and the lower half, the rest of Michigan. During your day Monday, we'll still have occasional snow, some light flurries at times, so it's not going to all clear out, and it's going to really linger. Areas further to the south that were seeing some of those storms earlier, we will transition over to a brief period of snow, and this snow could go as far south as Alabama, believe it or not. Now, for those in Alabama, nothing's going to stick. It's just going to be some light falling snow possible, a few flurries, but the fact that snow at all is possible in March is pretty crazy. A little further north, Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. This is where lighter snow is possible, but it could stick. We could have about an inch of snow sticking. It'll melt pretty quickly once the sun comes out in the next few days. As we progress later into the day on Monday and Tuesday, everything again continues to move east, but still some wind-blown snow possible near the Great Lakes, some snow possible also across interior New England, and then the storm kind of falls apart as it moves off the east coast. Snowfall totals, an additional 1 to 2 feet is possible over Wisconsin, northern Michigan, the UP of Michigan. That's really the hot spots. By the time the system is done, total snowfall totals of up to 3 to 4 feet isolated are still possible with a widespread 2 to 3 feet. So this is pretty historic, and it'll take a while for a lot of this snow to melt. Further into Minnesota, Iowa, we've had a lot of the snow already fallen. An additional 3 to 8 inches is possible. And then everywhere in this kind of light brushing of snow, this is where a few of those snow flurries are possible, all the way again as far south as Alabama and Mississippi. And then portions of the Appalachian Mountains could get maybe up to a half foot of snow. I do think this will be one of the last big winter storms of the season. As we go beyond this, I really don't see anything of this magnitude impacting. So if you're a winter lover, definitely enjoy this because we have some warmer air ahead. This will be dangerous though, especially to the north where all that wind will be blowing with the blizzard conditions. So make sure again we're staying weather aware and mindful and just staying safe. Just stay indoors. Travel will be very difficult during the worst of the blizzard. Alright, real quick, let's end off talking about temperatures. So first I want to talk about portions of the deep south because that's where a freeze, a pretty late season freeze is coming. You can clearly see the cold air, the cold front. There it is, a 20-degree temperature drop from the 50s to the 30s behind it. So it's going to be pretty incredible. This is what's driving all of our severe weather. As we go into the day on Monday, a much colder day for much of the central and eastern US. High temperatures into the 30s and 40s. Areas in the north, teens and 20s are coming. Now Tuesday morning, this will likely be the coldest. This is when freezing temperatures could extend all the way down to near the Gulf Coast. Portions of the deep south see these 20s and 30s. A freeze is coming. We have some freeze warnings out already. Sensitive vegetation, anything that's been growing already, especially considering the warmth we have, those need to be protected and covered, and this could be pretty impactful for some of the early season crops. Up to the north, it's going to be brutally cold again, single digits. This might be the last stretch of below zero temperatures until next winter, and wind chills could be as low as negative 10 degrees, so very cold. We'll slowly recover through the week. Highs on Tuesday in the 40s. Areas further to the west, we could get into the 60s. Wednesday morning, the freezing temperatures won't be as far south. The air mass will start modifying, and then as we go toward the end of the week, a bigger warm up will come. So winter will be here, but only for a few days. While it hits though, we're mainly concerned with some of those freezing temperatures in the south. Finally, we are tracking the desert southwest, where I talked about this last video. Record shattering heat is still expected with a dangerous heat wave potential. 100-degree temperatures is looking increasingly likely as we go Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and this is gonna smash some records. Phoenix, we could hit 107 degrees later this week. 107 degrees in March. Not only will this potentially break the daily record by 10 degrees, which is just crazy. From a statistical standpoint, point, this is unprecedented. Something like this should not happen in March. Typically, we don't see 100 degrees till June, July. The earliest 107 degree reading is May 2nd. So this is coming weeks ahead of schedule of even the earliest record, and it's just way off the charts. It's just shattering the record book. Tucson with similar numbers, 102 degrees. Los Angeles, 98 degrees. So this is dangerous, especially since many of us will not be expecting this, will be unprepared. Heat-related illnesses, we're concerned about that. And just generally, if you have any outdoor activities with a lot of exertion, make sure you're staying safe out there, because this will catch a lot of us off guard. Again, considering that it's March, we're not prepared for this. Look at some of these hot temperatures peaking in this region on the day Thursday. This will also be long duration. It'll last multiple days in a row, and that's why it's especially dangerous. Ooh, look at that. I saw a 108 degree reading there in the extreme tip of California on Friday. This will be a silent threat, but it'll be very significant. I think this will end up being one of the longest weather videos I make, just because, again, how much is happening across the country. So hopefully you stay safe out there. If you're in the path of severe weather, make sure you have a plan for when the tornado warnings hit. Have a way to get notified overnight. If you're in the snow, don't travel until the snow passes and some of the wind dies down so that visibility improves. A lot of wind coming over the central and eastern US over the next 28 to 48 hours. And then finally, if you're under the freeze, make sure you're protecting your vegetation sensitive gardens. And then if you're in the extreme heat, try to limit outdoor activities if at all possible during the afternoon hours. So man, March is really showing some crazy weather out there. We got everything across the country. I think middle to late week though, we're gonna calm down. That heat will linger, but for the rest of us, at least some quieter weather and a bit of a break of severe weather. It does look like after this system, we'll get a longer stretch of quiet weather, and that hopefully will take us into the end of the month and things won't be as active. But until then, pay attention to the weather, especially if you're in the path of some of those storms. If you always want to stay prepared for the weather, consider subscribing, liking the video and all that. Thanks for watching. Hope you all stay safe out there, and I'll see you next time.